everybody, and welcome to episode 124 of the Risk Cheese Radio podcast, your home for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. I'm your host, Brodinky. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Schmidt. Schmidt, you've been kind of everywhere, all over the place. It's been a little bit. I know you've been on the back of a hurricane. You've had some travel issues, but you're here with us finally. Welcome back.
Thanks, buddy. And I do have to apologize to everybody because things have been so inconsistent. It's not Bro's fault. It's totally my fault. But work has just gotten super crazy with travel this year, and it's been very difficult to really lock down times to get these things recorded on the road. So, for all of our avid listeners who always check in, again, we're still alive, we're here, but thank you for sticking with us, and my sincerest apologies to all of you who count on us for your weekly commutes. I have been the problem. I am the problem. It's me.
It's me.
I'm the problem. It's me. So there you go. So sorry. Very, very, very sorry.
Very good. How you doing otherwise, bud?
I'm good, man. Like I said, just coming off of a long stint of travel. I think it was about 5 weeks in totality. So just back and forth on the road, off the road for 5 weeks straight. So I'm a little tired, but the last part of that 5 weeks of travel was actually a personal trip with the family to Florida. And we got down there, got some sun, got some beach action, took the kiddos, and it was fantastic. Certainly well needed, and certainly, in my opinion, well deserved. But no, it was fantastic, and we had a blast. Of course, all the Seamasters had to make an appearance, so I took all my Omega Seamasters to the beach, and it was great. So there you go.
You've been watching any of the Olympics? Speaking of Seamasters.
I mean, yeah, it's sad at the point of recording, the Olympics are officially over. And we're getting ready just 12 days away from the Paralympic Games, which I will say this. If everyone loves the Olympics because it's amazing, myself included, if you've never watched the Paralympic Games, you should 100% watch it at some point. It is the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed. I've met some of these athletes before. Um, I didn't know that there are blind track and field runners,
Wow.
like blind hurdlers. It blew my mind. Like, how do you
Do
run?
they time the steps? How does
They
that
they
work?
they run with a lead runner and they're tethered together. So there's an
Ah,
able-bodied runner with a tether that they're tethered to, so they can feel the motion of the runner in front of them jumping, and they can time it and jump over the hurdles.
gosh, that sounds dangerous.
It was ridiculously dangerous, but it's like when you see it, it's hard enough to do hurdles as an able-bodied
Yeah,
person,
I know.
and then to do it like with an able-bodied person but tethered to them, timing it, and you're running completely blind. That just, I don't understand how it's feasible. And watching that will give you an entirely different perspective for like all of your inadequacies, even though you are completely able-bodied. So it's amazing. So if you don't have don't normally watch the Paralympic Games, which is often overlooked, unfortunately, um, please do it because there's some sports and there's some things out there with people that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this stuff, and to see them compete is unreal, like
Is
unreal.
Omega the official timer of that as well?
Yeah, yeah, they do both. So Olympics has concluded with that, but now they're gearing up for the Paralympic Games. So it'll be all new stuff for timing, all these new things that they debuted this year for Paris. So it'll be for both.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't watch a ton of it, but I mean, maybe it's just the advent of how crazy social media has gotten. But like, ha, do the Olympics feel extra flexy this year? I mean, I saw somebody running in a Richard meal.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, that's been happening for years.
Like I said, maybe I'm just not paying attention to it. I mean, I don't really watch the Olympics to begin with. Like,
So
I'm not that
so
huge into it. Aside from
it's
like everybody watches your Simone Biles, your Michael Phelps, stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
your USA
You're typical.
basketball, yeah.
Your typical stuff. But I mean, Richard Mill has been on the track and field since Usain Bolt. This is multiple summer games ago. I mean, he would run in a Richard Mill. He was like the first one to start popularizing running in a timepiece. And then his relay partner, who was also on the Jamaican team, was Johan Blake. who I
Hmm.
think is still a current ambassador of Richard Mille. But at the time, he was one of his relay partners. So this has been going on for a while now. But I think because of social media and because of how much more connected we are, there is a level a little bit more of commercialization. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what I'm feeling.
you look at somebody like Omega as the timekeeper, right? Like they're obviously everywhere because they do all the timing devices. But I cannot tell you how many athletes were competing and winning, breaking world records and winning golds and medals and things like that, wearing Aquaterra ultralights
I
or
was gonna say, I think
you know
Noah Lyles out on a dark side.
yeah, he had an Apollo 8 dark side of the
Yeah,
moon, fastest man on Earth. Won the 100-meter final in a dark side of the moon. Like I mean, that to me is really freaking cool. And as an Omega
and they made
fanboy,
a special ultralight for the pole vaulter, right? From
yeah. So,
Sweden, I think it was.
yeah, Mono Duplantis, he's been an ambassador for with Omega for many years. He's actually an American, but he competes for the Swedish team
Okay.
because his family is Swedish.
I mean, whatever, that's fine.
Whatever. I mean, yeah, it's cool, whatever. But I think he went to school at like LSU or something like that. Like just like a just a normal school, like kind of random though. But yeah, so Omega designed this timepiece for him. They did like a normal production Aquaterra like a few weeks ago in
Hmm.
steel, and then they did a new version of the ultralight for him in the Swedish flag colors.
Yeah, I
So
saw that.
it's sick, man. If I had $55,000 burning a hole in my pocket, I would seriously consider buying an ultralight because they're amazing
Yeah, I mean,
watches.
we've seen Rory golf in one, which is crazy enough, but
I mean, it's cool. I mean, you know the thing about the crown and everything, like the crown like pushes into the case.
oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
So it's got like a telescopic crown. So the crown sits flush against the case,
Okay.
and you can literally click it and the crown pops out. And that's how you can wind it and set all the features. And then you can click it back into the case. So it makes it so it doesn't dig into the back of your wrist if you're doing like high performance
Yeah,
sports.
okay. That makes sense.
I was like, that is just it's gangster. Like who needs this?
Just in case you need
Nobody.
to vault a pole.
Exactly. Like why not?
And apparently Mondo keeps setting the record by like point 0.1 every time, every go
he, he
around or
he
something.
keeps
It's some
breaking
funny
his own
story.
records.
Yeah.
He keeps breaking his own records, and like the closest guy behind him was like several like milestones back.
Yeah. But I
You
think
know,
it's like a running joke because I think every time he does it, he gets like a new check out of it or something. Like it's like a running gag that like he keeps just cashing in on his own record.
I mean, maybe he's got
But
to.
hey, I wish I had those problems.
I like to be the most badass pole vaulter in the world. Yeah, me too.
All right. Yeah, I had a pretty eventful week. Strap Habit and I are starting to fire up the engines for Men Wear Pink.
Love it.
Uh, yeah, a lot of people are fans, some are not, don't care. But I did get a watch in today from Zodiac. Big shouts to Zodiac. Thanks to our friend Mike Pearson for making the connect. Obviously, he's not there anymore, but he helped out. They kicked in the pink Sea Wolf. I'm thinking ahead here. Sea Wolf GMT with a 50/50 pink bezel. Looks great. It's got a bright pink hand. I think it's going to look sick if we could throw it on one of the straps we have for this
Oh
year.
man, this
I know what the
this
strap
watch is so
is.
good.
It's an awesome strap. Super hyped about it. Can't wait to get my hands on one. Can't wait to share it with all of you. But we are firing it up. Um, yeah, we're sort of all things ready to rock right now. We're gonna sort of wait till the end of September probably to get it going, but sort of just teasing it now as we get closer. So lots of fun there. Aside from that, I've just been working a lot, just trying to keep the old head above water. But
Always, man.
yeah, back to record another episode. So here we are.
I will say this, man. This
Yes.
watch that you secured is the business. Like it's so good. It's so unbelievably good. The colorway is phenomenal. And if I had $2,000, again, burning a hole in my pocket, I would snag up this watch in
Yeah, no,
a
it's really cool.
heartbeat.
And what's funny is I was sort of teased this before it was a thing, and I was like, oh man, I hope they make this so I can maybe get my hands on one for this. And there you go, manifesting,
Putting
speaking
the
it
good
into
vibes out
existence.
there.
Yep. So lucked out there. Thanks again, Zodiac. Thanks again, Mike.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you. This is so cool. This is probably one of the cooler ones that we've had the opportunity to give away.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we're gonna hope we've sort of set our own little record every year. So we're gonna hope to break another one this year. We've got some high hopes, so keep an eye out for that. While we're on the topic of pink, uh, I have been, we had an episode that I was joking around about living in simulation, and the past week or so between episodes, I've like kicked that into hyperdrive now just from observing a lot of media that's come out and things like that. So the Pink Connection, I happen to be scrolling and time put out a little review of Pink watches and sort of how they've penetrated the market here and how they're not they're not just made for a feminine looking watch anymore. They're sort of mainstream now. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't notice that.
It's only
Wasn't
been,
aware.
it's only been kind of what we've been doing for the last, what, 2.5 years?
I mean, it's good. It's good that it gets recognition. It's definitely come a long way, and people are much more secure about it than they used to be. I remember when I was in college, sort of the pink thing started coming around, and
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
the people I knew were receptive to it. Some of the people I knew were very much against it. It was just sort of like, at the end of the day, it's a color, dude. Like, get with it.
yeah.
Don't. Who
No, I
cares?
mean,
Like,
absolutely. And again, I was in school around the same time that you're mentioning. So that whole idea of like, real men, real men were pink, it's kind of
yeah,
like
that was the thing.
it was a thing before it became like a charity type situation. But like that was a saying, right? Real men will wear pink. They're comfortable in their own sexuality that they can wear a pink color, right?
Right. I mean,
But
well, that was that was the time. The opening line to "Touch the Sky" by Yeezy. He says they thought pink polos would hurt The Rock because like it wasn't a manly thing because he was all about the pastels and stuff. He's all into fashion and everything.
yeah,
But they were
yeah,
kind of
sure.
like, I don't know if you could put out a rap album wearing a pink polo. And he's like, dude, it's okay. It's okay.
It'll be okay, I promise.
But
Yes.
so pink's come a long way. But that was not the only thing on the list here, but it was just funny enough. That I know in our last episode we were talking about it, joking around about talking watches and things like the bear and all that. And I was talking about the connection and one of the people who came up is Daniel Boulud. I was talking about he's a famous chef. He owns a lot of different restaurants and things. He's super famous. And lo and behold, he ends up on talking watches. And I was like, well, that's insane. Cool. Although I hate when people do this. Like the one thing people do is right. You're gonna get Daniel Boulud on talking watches. Then you're gonna ask him where to get the best hamburger. Like, come on, dude.
I know. He's like, it's my restaurant. I'm like, oh
Well,
God,
yes,
of
of
course.
of course that is the answer, certainly, but also like,
Gee,
yeah,
who would have thought?
you're gonna go with like the most lame and ubiquitous food item that's on every menu in the world. Like,
Oh my gosh. I saw that. I was like, skip.
you know,
Yeah, man. I
I
don't
don't know.
I don't
Ask him
know.
how to make something signature. Like he has like so many things that he's known for. I don't know. It just seemed I was like I've heard so many interviews like that previously where people like, so what makes the best sandwich or whatever. You're like, dude, this is such a generic, weird, like softball question, but whatever. Anyways, I was
Yeah.
just like, I was like, man, I would have killed to conduct that interview. But hey, who am I?
Yeah, you're just a guy with a culinary background who loves watches. I mean, what
Correct.
what what better interviewer could possibly do
Couldn't be better.
this?
Couldn't be better. But yeah, so I was laughing at that. You brought something to my attention I didn't even know, but you had mentioned that. I mean, we had talked a while ago with sort of the implications of the Rolex Bucher marriage,
Yeah.
and now, from what you're telling me, is they're basically taking over Bucher more
Yeah,
or
I mean, this
less.
is this is something that really obviously nobody has talked about. It's certainly not in the media cycle at all. There's only been one documented report about this, and it's been Watch Pro. So if you want to find this out, you can see it. The article came out either yesterday or the day before, and essentially, it's basically listing that Rolex, their top executives are now assuming top executive positions within the Bucher organization, which I knew was going to happen when this announcement came about a year ago. When Bucher and Rolex finally merged together, I knew when we talked about it back then. If you guys don't believe me, go back and listen to it. I knew when we talked about it back then that this was only a matter of time before Rolex will start to insert itself more directly, and whoever would have been in the leadership a Bucherer is not going to be there very long. This is textbook what happens within companies. They always promise that nothing's going to change just to make sure.
It is a
It's
classic
true.
move.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, nothing's going to change. We're going to keep the leadership
Everyone's
cycle the
job is
way it is.
safe. Don't worry.
Everyone is where they need to be. And what happens is basically they're waiting until they get through all the antitrust stuff, all the arbitrations, the mergers is legally done, all that stuff, and then they start just rolling heads. Because at the end of the day, it's a merger, but it's an acquisition. Okay. And Rolex is acquiring Bucherer. So if I was an executive at Bucherer, I would be I'd be starting to sweat a bit because chances are better than not you may not have a job for very long, unfortunately. But that's just being objective. But it's this is something that nobody's covering yet. I don't know why it's not bigger news, but it is certainly something that will have drastic effects on the industry. Maybe not directly, but certainly residually. There's gonna be effects for sure.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the episode, and I think it's something that when the news broke, people kind of assumed it was going to be somewhat of a almost like a hostile takeover, but it's here. I think that's probably what it is. I think a lot of people maybe aren't talking about it because they're like, we knew it was coming.
I mean that can be the case, but if you're looking at this from more of a macro level, the impact it could have on the industry is like once Booker starts changing its entire structure, now you have nobody there that knows how many pieces were coming in, how many pieces were going out. Now all that will be controlled and mandated by Rolex. And if I was a retailer outside of Booker, that's when I would start really getting nervous because now has much more of a vested interest in Booker than ever before because
Mm,
now they are directly at the top of the organization.
right.
So that, again, as I said before, is going to lead me to believe that they're going to feed their Bucherer locations, their distribution first before anybody else. And if you're a Bucherer salesperson selling Rolex, good for you. You'll probably be okay.
Yeah, between that and
Um,
CPO.
if you're a micro brand, mom and pop retailer in the middle of North Carolina or the middle of, Indiana or some of these rural places, man, you better figure out a parachute opportunity. You better find a watch brand that can support you because things might be drying up on your allocation list.
Mm.
So
And
we'll
then,
see.
yeah, finally on our living in simulation list. I mean, how crazy, not even a month prior, we were talking about bringing back watches that we'd
Yeah.
like to see. And you had mentioned an Abercrombie and Fitch watch, which is basically almost like a ghost Hoyer,
Yeah.
right? It was branded for Abercrombie and Fitch, made by Hoyer. And lo and behold, we have a new Seafarer Herrera,
Ugh.
and it's in the exact configuration of the watch we were talking about.
Yeah. With like one slight modification.
And the best part is the exact one that you bring up is in the article.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, how crazy.
bro, I
Like,
don't know.
listen, like, no, you definitely couldn't crank out a watch in between the amount of time we were talking about it and when this came out. It's just
No.
insane that it
It's just
happened.
timing. It's
Yeah,
just timing.
it's
It
crazy.
it blows my mind that what's so funny to me about this, and just to extrapolate on this for a minute, it's like you come up with the ideas for what episode we're going to record. I have zero influence or
Right.
involvement in this at all. You decide what we're going to record, and you're like, all right, 2 or 3 hours before we record, this is the topic. Figure it out, do some research, and let's go. And you send me the topic. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of cool. We haven't done this in a while. Let's go through this. I'm like, you know what? I've talked about this watch before. I really love it. This would be one to bring back up. Just pure coincidence, pure timing. But it's like we have a crystal ball. I mean, we've said that throughout the years that we've been doing this, but I'm starting to believe that maybe you and I are not in the simulation. We're outside of it. We can see in. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's I don't even know how to say it. It's we're
Heard
right
too
too
many times to be coincidence.
exactly. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We are too correct too many times for it to be purely just coincidence at this point. And that's the thing that's kind of crazy to me is that we're right a lot. Whether you come up with something and you're right, or I come up with something and I'm right, or we wish something would come out and then it does come out. I mean, what really started to turn me on is when you came out with the Super Mario watch, like just completely,
That was insanity.
and then
That
it
was
came
crazy.
out. It was like the weirdest collaboration you could have ever imagined a luxury timepiece manufacturer to do. And they're like, yeah, we decided to do it. And we're like, wait, we were joking, but you guys are serious. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just crazy. It's crazy to me. But look, I'll say this in all sincerity, I love the watch. I
It's
think
a
it's
sick
awesome.
watch.
I mean, the colorway is amazing. I'm not too keen on the fact that it is kind of a collab with Houdinki, which seems to be kind of the tag MO. They launch kind of collaboration pieces with Houdinki, and they're typically the heritage pieces, all that stuff. But regardless, the watch looks amazing. I think it's very modern, but still, in the same design vein as the original. The only really noticeable thing is one, of course, the size and kind of the enlarged button on the side for the tide control. But other than that, I mean, it's a nice looking watch. It's a
Yeah.
really, really handsome watch.
And you did bring up something before the show that was very interesting and true in that oftentimes Tag will do this, like when they release the Skipper as a Hodinkee LE. Now we might see this, the Skipper is back as a regular production model. We might see this one maybe as a regular production model because I was saying the one that you brought up has sort of it was a white dial, but it's got a lot of
Hmm.
patina on them, the ones that are left. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, this would look really cool, I think, with like a cream dial or just like an off white. You could still use the blue, you could, but give it that vintage look, but in this glass box configuration that's so
yeah,
awesome. And I think it'd be a hit. So I think we'll see this in regular production. This one will stick around for a little bit, but I mean, how cool. You get tide control, you get the measure every 12 hours. I think it's 12 hours and like 24 minutes or something. The tides change, so you can keep track of that. The ad on it was kind of funny. Like they gave like a list of things you can do in this watch. It was like hunting, fishing, and like it just goes down the whole way. And it's like beach combing, and I was like, okay, yeah. And all I could think of was from Spaceballs when the guys are combing the desert with the giant
with the
the
giant
giant
combs.
comb.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also why this watch was requested by the original owner of Abercrombie and Fitch. Because again, in today's modern context, if you're under 40, you remember Abercrombie and Fitch as not a hunting outfitter. You remember it as a bunch of scantily clothed teens and
Yeah,
preteens
it was an MTV clothing brand.
with six pack abs and gigantic moose heads everywhere. Like
Right.
that's what you remember it to be. And fierce cologne being pumped through the AC system
Oh
to the
yeah,
point of
I can
just
still smell
nausea.
that. Yep.
Everyone can still smell it. I mean, it's still arguably a good smell, but I mean, it's just
No,
overpowering,
in
right?
big quantities that got
It
to you.
was way too overpowering. But anyway, long story short, I mean, we forget that they used to be a hunting outfitter. It was like the same thing with like Banana Republic. Like those
Yeah.
were hunting outfitters. Like you could buy safari gear, shotguns, and like canoes at Abercrombie and Fitch. So the idea that this watch was designed for hunting, for seafaring, for sailing, for a active and adventurous lifestyle using this tide indication on the watch is so very cool to me. And
Yeah.
it's a complication that we have not seen in decades, decades and decades and decades. I mean, I can't think of the last time I saw a title watch in a mechanical format.
Nope. I've seen plenty of digital, right? Nixon, a lot of those brands put them out, but
Yeah, surfing watches. G
yep.
Shock has done a few tide. I think they actually have one called the Tide. Like it's a tidal watch. But you know, nobody does this in mechanical format. So to see it come back, I was very impressed, and I like it a lot. I don't know if I like it $8,000 a lot,
Yeah.
but I do like it a lot.
No, I like it as well. Yeah, 8 grand is a little steep, but it's a cool watch.
Yeah, pretty.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so that kicks off our new stuff for the week. We got a couple Longines, one of which I know a lot of people are really excited about. They have shrunk the Zulu time down to 39 mils in titanium.
Hmm.
Man, I think that is a winning combination.
Oh yeah, for
It
sure.
looks really good. The titanium is going to make it really nice to wear. I mean, I know people who have the first Zulu time that came out and they're
Yeah.
big fans of it. I've heard nothing but really good reviews about it. Never got to check one out, unfortunately, but it's really cool. And yeah, I think this is going to be a winner. 21 mils on the lugs, which is a little weird, but it's fine. It's grade five
Yeah, but
titanium.
Longines makes a bunch of different aftermarket straps, or not aftermarket, but they make a bunch of OEM straps that'll fit the Zulu time. They're advertising them on their website, so it's not that bad. And plus, these days every single strap manufacturer
Yeah,
that's
they all make
worth their
21.
salt,
So,
they make 19, they make 21. I mean, shout out again to our boys at Strap Habit. Like he makes 21 millimeter straps in every single configuration.
yep.
So you shouldn't have any issues with odd lug sizes on the straps. Plus the bracelet's a quick release. So quick release titanium bracelet, throw on a strap, call it a day. It's quite the package. And I love the colorway. I love the titanium with kind of the grayish and black bezel, the red hand. It feels like a GMT, but it doesn't feel like it's too derivative of any iconic GMT. You know what I mean? I love the gilded hands and markers. It's just a great watch, and at 39 millimeters in titanium, this thing must weigh
Yeah,
nothing.
I think it's going to kill.
It's 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 awesome. It's awesome. It's honestly an awesome watch. Price point is $4,200. So for what? Just a little bit more than a Black Bay GMT. You're getting a titanium version.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really that all that far off from like an Oris, That's not
Well,
anything
these days,
crazy.
right?
Yeah,
So let's see. Let me just make sure I'm right on the price point. Yeah, so a Black Bay 58 GMT is 4,600. So this is what
42.
what I said 4275. So for less than the cost of a Black Bay GMT in 39 millimeters, I can get a full titanium version um with a I guess with the Nivacron hairspring, which is their new anti-magnetic hairspring, or Longines. You're getting a true GMT, and it's just a good looking package. So I don't know, man. I'd probably go Longines over the
Yeah, I
Tudor at
mean,
this
it's
point.
not master chronometer, but it is chronometer.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's not like you're losing a ton there. I mean,
no,
really gonna split hairs on that.
no, yeah, definitely not.
But I mean, this is definitely a little more of a ubiquitous style than the cherry Coke, whatever you want to call it. Um, I know a lot of people have a lot of gripes about that design, little things here and there, but I think this is a little more comfortable for your average watch person per
Yeah, and
se.
it's a little bit more everyday. It's like the
Yeah,
gray and the black is very everyday colors. Like the nothing against the Coke configuration or the and honestly, it's more like a Diet Coke if you remember those old like tan goldish cans. When you're comparing the Black Bay 58, it's more like that Diet Coke can from back in the day. Um, this is just a very subtle motif. Those very bold, red and blue and black and red, like it's pretty loud in some cases.
right. It might not be for everybody's tastes, I don't think.
Exactly, exactly. But I mean, either way, you can't go wrong. But I think this is going to be a new home run for sure. 39 millimeters in titanium. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and then they also added more to their Spirit collection. They added two
Hmm.
new flyback chronographs. One is sort of like a tobacco color. The other's a nice. It's not quite an olive green, but it's a nice shade of green, and they have a two tone. So
Hmm.
the tobacco has, I think it's pink gold, and then your standard gold on the green. The green I think looks really really nice.
Yeah, green and gold always is such a good color combination for sure.
Yeah, but
It's
this
just
isn't like
classy.
obnoxious. Like sometimes you get that really obnoxious green and gold. Like this is very subdued. I like this a lot.
No, I mean they're classy. And I mean, I know for most people this is probably not going to be the watch that they're going to go for. I mean, it's 42 millimeters. It's going to be a chunky boy just because,
17. Yeah, it's chunky.
it's chunky, but I mean, it's going to be a chronograph automatic with flyback complication, column wheel, like all that good jazz that you find in chronos. You're going to find it here. Um, but it's a handsome looking watch. I'm not going to argue about that. The movement's nicely decorated. It's a nice looking piece. So it's going to be a little bit thicker, but most value movement bases are just in general.
Yep.
So, pick your battles. If you're a dude that's probably 6'5" and you got an 8-inch wrist, well, maybe this is the watch that you get because you might need a little bit larger piece, you know?
Yeah. All right. Plugging along here. King Seiko has a new offering. It's and you know what? I'm surprised it took this long to get these, but they have a 36 millimeter offering now in three colors. It's sort of a teal, a I don't know, it's a very icy blue, and then a burgundy. They took the date off of these, and yeah, everything else is pretty similar to the old models, but this is a little more true to sort of the vintage King Seikos. When you think of the more vintage size, this is a little more subdued. It's a little nicer on the wrist. I don't know. I like them. I mean, nothing crazy, but the only thing I don't like is they put uh like Fotina on the hands of two of them. I don't know why, but I think they would look much cleaner with white hands. Like the ice blue has white hands, but then the burgundy and the teal both have cream hands, and I don't know, it just
Yeah.
looks a little silly to me. But but I think they're neat. Cool colors and all. But I'm surprised it took this long to get the more traditional 36 millimeters out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. Um, I think overall, these are nice designs. For me, it's not really a thing that I have to have. Um, the hand style is a little odd for me, just speaking frankly, but I mean, if you're looking for a smaller timepiece, you're looking for a nicer King Seiko, that kind of like new entry level price point. And again, entry levels in quotes these days,
Yeah,
right?
hard quotes.
But it's more of an affordable entry luxury piece from Seiko. This King Seiko is certainly something that's nice, and the finishing is great. I mean, like it's arguably one of the best, especially at the price point.
Yeah.
So, non-starter for me. I don't really have a need for one of these pieces in my collection, but certainly a pretty looking timepiece. So
Yep.
good to
Uh,
go.
yeah, yeah. We got a. So if you remember, I think I don't know too many people that aren't a fan of the Mito decompression
Oh,
scale
so
divers they
good.
released, but they released this one in PVD. And so now
Yeah.
those decompression scales, the super colorful ones, pop even more.
Yeah, it looks good.
So if you were a fan of the old one, I think you'd be a big fan of this one.
Yeah.
I like it a
I
lot. I think it's
Yeah, me
cool.
too. Me too. I really do like this a lot. And it's cool because I don't know if you knew this, it's a box set.
Is it?
So yeah, it's a box set. So it's the Ocean Star Decompression Timer 1961. This is the PVD version. It's an LE of 1961 pieces, but it comes with the PVD black mesh, a black calfskin strap with the rainbow colorways stitching, matching buckle, and it comes with a teal turquoisey blue Tropic
That's
with
neat.
black hardware as well. So it comes with three different strap configurations to actually wear the timepiece, which is sick. It has the newer movements, caliber 80. It's got the Nivicron hairspring, PVD coating. Nothing too crazy, right? Something too crazy. It's PVD, but I mean, for $1,400 to get a nice watch with a cool, funky past with three different ways to wear it, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm liking this one. So, and the thing is crazy though, is like if you go to the Mito website, it takes you to Teddy's website to buy it.
That's interesting.
So I don't know if this is a timepiece that was made exclusively for him or not.
I didn't see anything about it, but it's possible.
I didn't see anything about it either, but it's weird that the Mito website would take you to his website to finalize a transaction,
Yeah, unless he's like the
right?
only local retailer who carries it.
No, there's no way. There's
I
there's plenty of people that carry Mito.
No, I just mean this specific model. Like,
I mean, maybe.
I don't know. Weird though.
Like, what?
Does it say
It's
what Danny Milton's doing over
He's writing articles, man.
there? Your boy?
Your boy, he's managing the Teddy blog. The Teddy blog. Yeah, he just wrote an article today about the new Seamaster America's Cup. Is Blake over there too?
I don't know, man. I just know he's collecting.
Isn't his name Butner?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's over there too.
He's rounding up people. That Teddy.
And good old Tedders. Yeah, Butner is there. Writing articles too for the blog. Did we cover this red dial lunar pilot?
Hmm. I don't think so.
Red and white Bulova
I don't
lunar
believe
pilot?
so. No,
Okay. Well, there's a red and white Bulova lunar pilot.
that's
Looks kind
interesting.
of good.
Take a peek. See now that you're gonna mention it.
They're calling it the lunar pilot Blood Moon. Not to just
Oh,
completely
okay. Yeah.
derail
All right.
everything.
I feel like I might have stumbled across this. I don't remember it though.
Okay. That's kind of nice. Anyway, segue.
Yeah. And then I think a first timer for our new drop section, Luminox is making their
Yes.
endeavors into the automatic space. They have a new diver called the Pacific Diver Automatic. You can get it in black, you can get it in blue, or our personal favorite, as usual, full loom white dial called the
Oh,
Midnight Mariner. Looks really cool. It's 42 mils. This is a really neat watch. And you know what's funny is I told you before the show, the guy that I sort of work in tandem with for Men Wear Pink, he has a couple Luminox. And he always asks me, "Oh, you ever do anything with Luminox?" I'm like, "Nah, I really never found one that tickles my fancy. Like, I'm not that huge on the brand, like even
yeah.
just as far as things I've owned." And I stumble across this, and I'm like, Paul, this is you, man. This is where you need to be. Like this
Yeah.
watch right here. Like it's got tritium. There's nothing not to like about it. It's sporty. It's masculine. Like this is a cool watch.
Yeah.
It's got a
This is
wave dial pattern.
Yeah, and it's cool because like the wave dial pattern, like especially on the white dial, like the wave dial pattern is there and it looms and you lose the wave dial pattern. Like it's
Yeah,
kind
which
of
is
weird how
neat.
that works, but it's kind of sick. And to your point, we don't really cover Luminox a lot because it's like the Navy SEAL, like quartz watch and that kind of thing. And nothing against anybody that owns Luminox. I know there's plenty of people out there that
No,
have them
there's a
as
lot of
beaters
Luminox fans out there.
for sure. But for many, many, many years, I just haven't found anything that I'm like, that is the watch to get from Luminox.
Right, right.
And I think this is arguably a very good option. I mean, it's expensive relatively for mechanical watches, but it is a Swiss timepiece. It's an automatic Solita. It's 13.95 on the rubber strap with the full loom dial, which is the top end of the spectrum for this automatic piece. But at 42 mils with a great sporty design, you got Luminox, robustness and durability. You got tritium gas tubes. You got Super Luminova. I mean, this is a cool freaking watch. And if you're looking for a well-built timepiece that's really a beater that you can beat the crap out of, I mean, this is the same price as like a Prospex Seiko,
Yeah,
and that's not a Swiss movement.
and you
You
get
know what I
something neat
mean?
and different here. And you know what I like because the full loom dial is white. The indices are black. They also match the uh, date wheel black as well, so it
Yeah,
looks really fluid. The design's really good. I'm impressed by this. I think this is a really neat watch, and I know a
yeah,
lot of people like Luminox because if they're a fan of sort of that you know tag Formula One that we saw come back, but that might be like a little bit of a dainty design for them. A lot of them like styling like the Navy SEAL because it's a little more masculine, it's a little more beefy, a little more of a
yeah, yeah,
knockaround watch. So I know a lot of people have expressed their adoration for Luminox with regard to that. But I think this is a really, really cool timepiece. I mean, I think if you like sort of that similar I mean, he's got a similar design language to a Tag Heuer, but like certainly not the prices that we're seeing these days. Like, so for
yeah,
13.95, really pretty neat, right? I
yeah.
would
I
rather
mean,
have this than pay for the Tag Night Diver.
1,000%, 1,000%. The only thing that you're losing with the Night Diver is the all black colorway.
Yeah,
That's it. But this is a very, very, very cool looking watch,
yeah. I
especially with
was
the tritium, especially with the design, especially
really
with the Night
impressed.
Diver aesthetic. It's arguably a very, very nice looking timepiece. So if you're
Yeah,
interested in that, go get you one.
I
Because,
hope these sell, man. I think they're really neat.
well, I think this is them trying to finally push into more of more of the
enthusiast
luxury
realm.
diving space, more of a enthusiast space. I mean, you look at some of their designs now, and they're kind of a little bit more refined, a little bit more, less craziness and kind of more intentionality behind what they're producing. I like it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. All
Never
right.
thought never thought we'd bring them up, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are. So another brand we've never brought up. This is going to be sort of the segue here this week. But this is the tea for the week. Across social channels, there seemed to have been, I don't want to call it a beef, but a tiff, if you will. Um, but Atelier Wen felt compelled to put out a statement regarding their dials, where I guess some people, I mean, they don't specify who, but I mean, if you're going to put out something like this, either it's someone or a group that's kind of influential, or it must be people in numbers, or are making allegations that Atelier Wen is known for handmade guilloche dials by their guilloche master, and some people are saying that the dials are taking way too long to make, and that they're, I guess, not filling their allocation in time is what the
Yeah.
accusation must be. But Atelier went on record to say that, hey, our master uses such and such machines. They're a little rudimentary, but they make for nicer dials. We feel that his work is really speaks for itself and such. And I wanted to get your take on it specifically because you're kind of I think the go-to guy for a lot of our listeners. If you check our DMs, I mean they want to know everything from the somebody wanted to know about the uh, potential ramifications of wearing jewelry while using a like it during a racing sport, and how that might
Mhm.
like the science behind aerodynamics and such. And I was like, well, this is just this is a rabbit hole I don't know if I want to open. But
Yeah, sure.
they constantly come into our DMs with questions for you about stuff like this, where you're kind of the go-to wealth of information with regard to a lot of these processes and things. I mean, we talk about everything from Tahitian mother of pearl to
Yeah, yeah,
all kinds of material science and anti-mag technology. So I think, this is something a lot of people don't cover. And, I think a lot of people have experienced guilloche, especially on the lower end. I mean,
yeah.
if you've ever owned, some of the Orient Bambinos or things like that, they do it, but there's a big difference between that guilloche and this guilloche. I guess
Yeah.
I will let you take this away for right now, but we're gonna get into this whole thing right here.
Yeah, so I mean there's so guilloche or engine turning is an ancient watchmaking technique. And if you're doing it the traditional artisanal way, it's very labor intensive, very, very cost invasive. Um, and we'll get into kind of more of the reasons why it can take as long as it does. Especially when you're doing this solely as one singular person doing a production like this, it's going to take you time. Now, like you were mentioning, these Orients, these other pieces that are mass produced, some of these, Seiko pieces that you'll see on like cocktail series, things like that, they'll have some level of guilloche, but the difference is it's much more of a decorative pattern.
Right.
Okay. So this type of guilloche, especially on the lower end price spectrum, is typically derived using some type of metal stamping die where an artisan will cut will carve a pattern into this metal stamping die. It's typically done in brass, and then they will use that stamping die to impress that patterning onto a dial substrate. Typically, dials are all made in brass within the watch industry, with very few exceptions. It's a very easy material to carve, to engrave. It's very low cost in the sense that if you mess it up, you're not wasting things like gold or titanium or
Yeah.
something that could be a lot more expensive. And plus, you can achieve a multitude of different finishes and colorations to brass, which makes it very well suited for this. So traditional guilloche in the lower price spectrum is typically done through a stamping effect. Now the challenge with this is one, you have to create the die. So a lot of times companies will use like a computer CNC machine to create this die. They engrave the stamping die itself, and then they'll use that to replicate the pattern. The problem with this is there's only a certain amount of dials that you can produce in this configuration before the die becomes dull and you start to lose the fidelity of the image you're trying to impart onto the dial. So there is a finite time where you can use it. Now, Traditional guilloche, or artisanal guilloche is probably the better way to say it, is done by extremely well trained dial manufacturers. This is a classic ancient way of making watch dials. Nobody really does it this way anymore because it is such a labor intensive process. Now, the old school way, if you go all the way back, it would be basically hand engraving. So if you have a traditional guilloche dial, this could have been done, solely through hand engraving, much like you would find on, early pieces of cutlery or things like firearms, like when you had like a hand engraved
Right.
shotgun,
Yep.
that kind of stuff, that type of labor of love and intensive work would be kind of applied to the guilloche dial. If you remember too, there was a big trend maybe about 2 or 3 years ago where everyone was doing kind of like the firearm engraving on their watch cases.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
remember
I
that?
remember that.
It was kind of a crazy trend for a hot minute. It looked really awesome, but it was like people were hand engraving these cases to replicate this, and there was very few really good artisans that could do it. So the challenges with that type of engraving and that type of dial work is there's always going to be inconsistencies because it is done completely by
By
hand.
hand. Yep.
So there is a margin of error or discrepancy that can occur because it is going to be done in truly a handmade process. Now, the traditional guilloche or the artisanal guilloche that'll yield the best results, but also be replicatable, is going to be through engine turning. So this is basically where you have an engraving machine. You are the dial maker manipulating the actual dial itself, rotating it through the process, and the machine is, and you're controlling the speed of the machine. It's how it's cutting and everything, and it's cutting the pattern into the dial. So this is very much still a labor intensive process. It's very much still a hand done process because the engraver has to manipulate the machine, but they're not physically engraving the material out themselves, if that
Right.
makes sense. This allows you to create much more symmetrical patterns, much more dimensional patterns. The challenge with this, though, is in doing something like this, if you mess up even the slightest amount, everything is scrapped. Everything is no longer a viable part of the pattern. So it's the best looking with still the artisanal craftsmanship and handiwork involved, but it also increases the chances for mistakes. Because, like I said, when you're doing hand engraving, people understand, well, there's going to be some level of hand engraving here that could allow for variance, right? It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's going to be pretty close because it's done by hand. But when you're using this engine turning machine, you can create the speed in which the engraver moves and the finishing and how it's done. But if you do it too deep or you do it too fast or you don't do it at the right speed, your little tiny, let's say it's a pyramid shape, your little tiny pyramid shape might be slightly off on the next one and it completely ruins the entirety of the design. So it's not as easy of a process as you might think. If you're looking for an expedient outcome that's going to give you a pretty consistent result, then you do stamping. But when you're talking about hand guilloche, whether physical hand carving or doing the engine turning, um, that is extremely labor intensive. And if you're the only person doing this
Yeah.
for one company, again, like how many do you think this guy can crank out? I mean, one dial is probably 10, 12 hours of work.
Right. Now imagine you ruin that thing 9 hours in.
Yeah, you're screwed. You have to completely scrap it and start over. And that's just to do the engraving. That's before any type of coloration or PVD or enamel work, whatever else could be added on top of that. That's just to actually do the texturing of the dial. Nothing else has been done yet. There's no transferred elements. There's no logos applied. None of that is there at this point. It's literally just the decorative pattern. Everything else will be added on after the fact. So, like you said, you could get to hour 9 out of 12 of engraving this thing and slip and mess up, or you didn't drop the machine at the right time, and so it cut your pattern too deep. All these variances can happen. This is not an easy process. And this is a process that in most places they don't even teach anymore because it requires so many diligent hours of working to even create something similarly good. Like if like you asked me and you to do an engraving on a dial, we would screw up almost immediately because we don't know how to manipulate the machines. We don't know
Right.
the speed in which we need to cut things. The precise turning or the turning rate of the actual dial as we're doing the cutting. All of these things. There's a specific science to it, and there's a lot of this handwork that's done by touch and feel, and the only way you can do that is simply by trial and error and experience. So your average person is just not going to be able to do something like this. And if you have one singular person doing it, and let's say I don't know how many, I know it's an LE, but I don't know how many pieces were produced. Let's say it's 50. What's 50 times 12?
Well, 5 times 12 is 60. So add a zero.
So what, 600 hours? Yeah, 600 hours of work. So if we're talking 600 hours divided by 24 hours in a day, that's 25 days
Of straight work.
of straight
Not,
work. If you're
yeah.
if you're working every single day. Now let's say it's 600 hours and you're working an 8-hour workday. It's 75 days. Okay. So there's your lead time. Okay. Like this is not an easy and again, that's just to engrave the dials. So if this guy does the coloration, does the PVD, does the lacquering, whatever else on top of that, there's even more potential that something can get screwed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Like
course.
you could fully engrave the dial and it's perfect, and you go to spread the lacquer on it, and it doesn't come out right, or it doesn't come out with the same type of consistency, or you go to do a PVD application and it doesn't come out the exact way you want. There's always going to be failure. Always going to be failure. I remember from way back in the day. Um, I was sitting in on Omega training. The rep came by and he was like talking about enamel dials, which Omega doesn't really do a lot of. But he was telling me back then that of all the enamel dials that Omega goes through to manufacture, 60% of them don't survive production.
That's sickening.
60%. More than half of every enamel dial they create will fail, break, crack, bubble, discolor, or get to the final stages of assembly and break before it can actually be installed on a timepiece. 60%. That's just one company. And this is
Seems
Omega.
not worth
This is
it.
Omega. This is like a company that's got the massive backing of a ginormous watch conglomerate group. They can do all these things. They have the technical processes to do this. This is like one ancient Chinese dude like hand engraving dials in his basement.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, you
kind of
think about how many people there are in China, and he's like the one dude who could do it,
yeah.
allegedly.
And again, is this all a made up story? Probably not. I think Atelier Wen's response to this was pretty cut and dry. And there's a lot of people who are supporting them, for their authenticity and kind of what their explanation was. And really, they don't need to explain themselves, but I'm glad that they did for the sake of optics. But just breaking it down. I mean, again, if we're talking, 50 watches, 12 hours approximately of handwork, you're looking at 600 total man hours. You divide that by 8 hours in a workday, and that's literally cutting dials for eight
Right. That's if
hours,
you cut the dial for 8 hours a day.
8 hours a day. You're still looking at 75 days of manufacturing for just those things. That's crazy. And that's not even considering fatigue, right? Like there's a human element here. So like your back aches, your hands start to go
I was gonna
numb.
say
Like you need
arthritis.
to eat. Like you need to eat and spend time with your family. Like all these other things that are external factors. That's not even counting those in. That's literally like you are a robotic machine and you're gonna cut dials for 8 hours a day for the next 75 days to produce this output.
Yeah,
I mean, did we find out how many there were?
I'm sure we could find it. see if I can find it real quick.
I'm just curious.
I know it's a collab with Revolution. I know
Yeah.
they've done one before, but I think this is their, I want to say it's their third, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see here.
It is funny that it's called the Kui. I mean, not that I'm sure that's not how you
Okay,
pronounce it
so
in
I was right.
Chinese,
I
but
was right. 50 pieces. That was just a complete guess. So 50 pieces.
yeah, that was
So
a good guess.
I mean, that just seems normal. You know what I mean? Like it's small enough to be exclusive, but it's also large enough to be, special. You know.
Yep.
But yeah, 50 pieces. And again, engine turning is an art. It takes a very long time. And you'll notice when you're looking at these dials, um, the gear shape pattern gets smaller as it goes to the inside portions of the dial, right? So you're talking about much more definitive, much more fine, minute cutting and engraving that has to be performed here. Because on the outside edge, it's larger, and as it goes around, it slightly gets smaller, 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 right to where the hand stack is, and it's basically imperceptible that it's there, but it is there, and that to
Maybe
me is mind blowing.
maybe that's why it's called the Perception.
Maybe.
So if you're unfamiliar, go check it out. It's the Atelier When Perception in collaboration with Revolution. It is sold out though, so there's that.
Yeah, it's sold out, but I mean, as it should be, as it should be. And the fact that people are out here roasting this about it taking too long. Well, you know what? Sorry, man. Why don't you go cut your own guilloche dial? It's not an easy
Yeah, I
process.
mean, there's
It's
definitely a value to be placed on craftsmanship. I mean, I know some people appreciate it more than others. I mean, some brands kind of do it better than others or focus more on that type of stuff. But it's at the end of the day, that's art. Like that's not just design, that's true
no,
artistic ability, and that's something to be appreciated by certain people. And the ones that do place that kind of importance on it are the ones I hope are buying these. And not just people who are chasing the next best thing.
no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is truly an art form. This is truly something that most people today outside of the watch industry could never attempt to do. And even within the watch industry, there's very few brands that still produce guilloche dials to this level of handwork. Most of them, considering the price point, because I mean, let's be honest, this is not an inexpensive timepiece, but it's not the most expensive timepiece.
No, for what they could charge, definitely not.
It's what, under $4,000. I think I saw it was
It's
like
like
3,800
yeah,
bucks, something like
three
that.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, not the most expensive, certainly not the least expensive. But at the end of the day, when you're comparing other brands that do hand guilloche work to this level, in many cases, you could be looking at brands 10 times this cost.
Yep.
I mean, just being realistic. And that's kind of where most of these companies are going to be at. So I find it very disingenuous that somebody was able to kind of create this story. And again, I don't know if it's a story or not. They could be completely lying through their teeth. I don't know. But just knowing what I know about how these manufacturing processes are actually done, it seems very, very odd that wouldn't be the time frame, that wouldn't be the case. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Just finishing my thought I was talking about. I don't think you pronounce it kui in Chinese, probably not, but uh kui is if you're familiar with it, is a guinea pig like rodent that they eat
Oh,
in Latin America. So I have a little chuckle every time I see it. But
that's
uh
quite interesting.
yeah, check that out, kui. But yeah, this is it's a nice watch, but like I said, I hope the right people are getting them. Oh, speaking of, I found out my wife is playing watch collector games. So the female equivalent of collecting things is the Stanley Cup. If you're familiar with those, I'm
Oh
sure you
yeah, yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's funny every time somebody says Stanley Cup, I immediately think of the golf trophy first, or the hockey trophy first.
yeah, yeah. But the Stanley, I don't know what you call them, but they're little stupid little tote cups that
Yeah, tumblers.
yeah, tumblers. There you go.
Yeah.
So she gets one in the mail, her like eighth one, And she goes, yeah, I bought two. One of them, it's a limited edition. I'm going to resell it. I'm like, oh, you're like a watch collector scumbag. This is great. Now you understand fully where I come from.
Oh no. What did she say?
She was just like, oh, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna sell it for profit. I'm like, that's really nice of you. So that you're the person ruining the Stanley hobby. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of women ruining the
But I'm
Stanley
like, dude, I'm
hobby.
like, they make limited editions of these. Like,
Oh
Jesus.
yeah.
So this is
They
where we're at.
and then they make like Target collabs and Starbucks collabs, and people have literally trampled
Well,
people.
that's what she said. She's like, you'll never guess the market for these things. I'm like, I don't even really want to know, but
It's
but I
kind of
already
disgusting,
understand.
actually.
I already understand where this comes from. So no introduction needed, but
Yeah.
also hilarious.
Yeah, it's I mean again, not to get down that rabbit hole. It's kind of disgusting. I've watched a bunch of like social media articles about it, and the one thing I'll find that's kind of interesting about all this is like for the most part, guys can be like decently civilized about certain things like this. Like women will just they'll kill you for the Stanley Cup. Like I mean like it's crazy. It's crazy. You know, same thing like when Lulu drops a new legging, you know, it's like people will like bull rush the mall to get their hands on it for the first time. I'm like, guys, it's not that serious. Like it's just spandex. Like let's be honest. It's probably giving us all cancer anyway, you know. But what do I know? Yeah, dude, the Stanley Cup, not the hockey trophy, but the thermos,
The
the tumbler.
fashionista icon.
And you know, do you know the story of Stanley?
I think I've heard it. I don't recall it, but I think I've heard it. It's
So Stanley started out as the original construction workers thermos.
oh yeah, no, I did
So
know
like
that.
if you remember like the metal cans that like our grandfathers used to have like the little green cap
Yep,
on it,
yep.
like that was Stanley. Like they made lunch boxes and thermoses for like construction workers and day laborers. And basically at one point they were tanking in business and they created this like tumbler series kind of model after like the Yeti cups and things like that, but it had a
Yeah.
handle and a straw. And they produced them in like these really boring beige colors. And these two like lady influencers were like, "Hey, these cups are really cool. We think they're fashionable. You should make them in a bunch of feminine colors and let us push them on our, you know, Facebook Marketplace or Amazon storefront or whatever it was back then." And so Stanley was like, I don't know about this. And they kind of did it anyway. And it just like exploded.
And
Now
now they're
everyone's got
just
Stanley
swimming in
Cups.
money.
Yep. 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 Printing it, actually.
Yeah, for real.
So there you go. There's your short, abridged version of the Stanley
How
history.
long do you think it takes to craft a Stanley Cup? What's the
Five
lead time on
seconds.
that?
5 seconds.
What about a limited edition? Do they make guilloche?
Yeah, definitely don't need a guilloche. They do make cool patterns now.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's a new
I did
thing.
see that.
So it's not just the color. It's not just the color blocking anymore. Now it's
Now it's
got
texture.
designs and
Yeah.
colors. Yeah. I'm like,
Uh,
all right, guys, you really are doing it now. So it's
uh,
funny. It's funny. You Google Stanley Cup, and the first
and
thing that comes up is not the hockey trophy. It's the actual Stanley Cups. I'm like,
that's that's funny.
this is a problem. But there you go.
All right. On that note, I think we're gonna put this one to rest. Schmitty,
Wait, what? You don't want to talk about more Stanley Cups?
the hockey trophy or the other one?
You know, I don't know crap about hockey, so there you go. Apparently, I know about social media marketing and Stanley Cups.
All right,
There
we'll
you go.
put this one to rest. Schmidt, it's been a pleasure. Folks out there, hope you enjoyed it. We'll touch base with you again soon. Till
Take
then,
care. Adios.